Welcome to the Nate KG Podcast, a show dedicated to exploring the nuances of jump rope, where I talk with jumpers of all skill levels, backgrounds, and fitness goals. Usually I interview a guest on the show, but this episode is a little bit different. At the time this episode is being published, it is the beginning of 2020, and I figured what better way to start the year than by doing a quick review of lessons learned in 2019. So I've put together 6 different clips from a few of the past interviews. To kick things off, we'll start with a piece of episode 7 where I talk with Mike Fry about what the rope means to Mike and his thoughts on scaling your activity with the jump rope to match your goals.
Like, I've heard other people say this about their chosen thing, like I feel like I've heard comics, talk about this, or like actors or musicians. Like, what else would you be doing? Like, you can't, like, for me, it's like, I can't breathe if I'm not jumping, if I'm not doing something with jump rope jumping. If I'm not actually jumping, I need to be talking about it. If I'm not performing, I need to be teaching. If I'm not competing, I need to be, filming something. Like, I need to be doing something with jump rope.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because last year or two, I was at a different job. That's when I was living in Santa Barbara, and I didn't do much jump rope, like, ever. And just because of, you got other things going on and, work stuff and trying to have a social life and, date and all that kind of thing. And so it just kind of fell by the wayside, and I was still working out, but I wasn't really jumping as much. I also hadn't worked with a team in a long time. And when you don't have a team around you, it can be very difficult to push yourself, And it's just funny that you say that when you can't breathe without jump rope, because I remember coming back to jump rope and just integrating it in whichever way I possibly could, in the smallest way, like not trying to do crazy tricks, but just the foundations like you were talking about. And it felt like I was coming back home. I'm like, Oh yeah, like this, it's like a deep breath of like, yes, this is nice. I feel relaxed.
Yeah. And
yeah,
I think it's so important to like, just to like listen to yourself, like listen to your body, listen to what you feel like, you need. Because for a while I was actually, I was sort of at that, decision point of like, you either need to go all in on jump rope or you need to get like a real job, like whatever that even means. Like, what's a real job? And I can't remember exactly what, pushed me towards jump rope, but I decided to go all in on jump rope. And that was just because I was listening to myself, and what felt right to me was a rope in my hand, was jumping, was teaching, like all these different things. And I'd be miserable. I'd be so unhappy. So I think, whatever level it is for you or for anybody listening, it could just be that you need to jump once a week and that does it for you. And that's great. Like, you got to listen to yourself. Or it could be that you need to jump every single day. But try to listen to yourself and be in tune with what you actually need, because it's really important just for your mental health. Sonny talked about that. I was listening to the first episode, and just what it can actually do for your state of mind is huge.
Man, like, I didn't even realize I needed to hear that, but I did, and like, that's super helpful. Like, even for me, like right now, like it's so true. Like, listen to yourself and like, yeah, how much do I need to jump? And I think obviously that applies to so many other things, but yeah, how much do you need to jump? What makes you happy? Do you need to be a world champion, or do you need to be able to do your TJ smoothly,
Yeah. And I think it can vary from week to week too. And that's okay. Like, it can be the same thing with your working out, outside of jump rope. Like, I'll get into habits where I'm running consistently every day or every other day, and then I'll go through a phase where I'm not. And I'm trying not to punish myself as much, or just, get as down on myself, because I think, again, it comes back to just listening to yourself. And, you may go through phases. It may feel like, okay, I'm jumping every single day and that feels right. And then I need to mix it in with other things.
I kind of want to jump in on this real quick, because this comes up for me. I mean, honestly, multiple times a day, because there's a lot of things that I think about and that I would like to get done, whether that's jump rope or not. But for the sake of, it's jump rope. And so I think part of that, the not punishing yourself, you can restate that also and say, make a decision, make it clear and say it, and understand in a week, in a month, in 6 months, when you haven't done that thing, or when you come up to like that point where you start to punish yourself, you can look back and say, no, 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 I decided to do this. And for me, that kind of takes the form in terms of like videos, right? Like I've done like those vlog videos, with Carly and Jimmy and you and Eddie and Venice and stuff. But about, I don't know, a month ago, it started to be that I started to have these ideas, right? Like, oh, a podcast, or what if I could provide value and content on Instagram, or maybe through like blogs, or like different ways of giving back to the community. And it started to like, I want to do more vlogs and I want to do more video because I genuinely enjoy it. But in terms of time, and because I still do work a full-time job, so time and what's easiest for my schedule, I chose, okay, for the next however long, I'm not gonna put myself down for not putting out video content.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what the expectation of, okay, I will be putting out these other things, right? Like the podcast.
Yeah.
But I think just defining it and saying, here's what I'm expecting of myself. And then if you don't meet that expectation, don't be mad, just review like, oh man, that was actually just too much,
Yeah.
Or it wasn't a priority in the first place.
Yeah. And and be open to the idea that like your goals and your focus may change. I mean, you could set a goal and at that moment that could feel like the goal that is what you want and that you're chasing, but that can change, week to week or even, day to day. And just kind of be open to that and be open to like a goal or, your focus shifting and morphing into something else, rather than just being so rigid. And then when it doesn't go the exact way you've planned, you beat yourself up.
Up next is a section of my conversation with Susan Valente Olson in episode 5, where Susan discusses the use of skill sheets and how she balances progress with enjoyment. Like I feel this, like when I'm doing my speed runs, I'm looking at my numbers from last week and I'm like, all right, well, I still didn't, I still got some low scores for me, but compared to last week, a couple runs were a little bit higher than they were. And then I leave thinking, cool, like I did a good job, No,
and I 100% agree. I did develop a goal sheet back in February for all my jumpers before regionals came around. And we did totally establish that. And every month we went through and said, okay, what are our numbers? Are we increasing? Are you hitting the goal that you want to hit for regionals? And yes, definitely bringing it back to the work and the effort that the athlete put in, not in compared to everybody else, but in compared to themselves. Are they putting the effort in and creating that internal motivation for them? And I think that's tricky as a coach. How do you because some kids need that external motivation. I have some jumpers, if I, cheer them on, they get super nervous. And then I have other jumpers where if I cheer even louder, it makes them go faster.
Mm-hmm.
So as a coach, you're constantly weighing this. I know what I'm comfortable doing as a coach, but I want to make sure that I'm doing what's comfortable for the athlete as well.
What does that goal sheet look like? I'm really curious, like the exact details of that.
I know I had
if you know off the top of your head.
Yeah, and this was like a first trial run. I've reached out to it. I'm kind of dipping into another conversation that we wanted to have about how to be a coach and what support I think new coaches need. I've reached out to some coaches that have been around for a while and tried to pull some information of what works for them. And I don't know if I got a goal sheet from anyone. So I kind of created my own, and it's a first trial. So I started with like every single event for the tournament. And then, so like 30-second speed. And then I had about 4 different columns. And one was, what did you get today? And the other was, what do you want to accomplish at regionals? And then I had the kiddos break down their numbers. So if they wanted to hit 150, well, I guess we were talking 30-second speed.
Yeah, I was going to say 150 and 30 there. That's a world champion right there.
Yeah. So my kiddos were probably more around, 70, 80 was their highs. So if they wanted to hit 70 at regionals and today they got 56, what do they need to increase by each month? And then also on the backside, I had them write notes down. So if we did a speed test that wasn't a month down the road where the columns were, they could write down, I got this on this day. I had practiced here. And I believe there was a section on my goal sheet that also said, how are you going to get there? So especially for my high schoolers who I want them to be responsible for their fitness as well, are they going to go to their track gym workout at school after school? They're going to go to the weight room. That's going to be part of their fitness to getting stronger and faster. They're going to be responsible for that extra time outside the jump rope gym. Mm-hmm. So really trying to put it back on the kiddos. And again, one of the things that I love to do, and during competition season, we didn't have a lot of time, was we sat at the end while we were stretching, because as I'm learning, recovery is very important.
Oh, so yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then I would go around the circle and ask the kids, what's one thing you want to grow and what's one thing you want to glow? So glow and grows. So glow was like something you were super proud of. Hey, I got my TJ today. I'm super proud of that at practice. And then something I want to grow is I want to get a quad, whatever that looks like. And what's funny is, as human beings, we really struggle with owning our accomplishments. So the grows were super easy for the kids to spit out. But there was a lot of times where they were like, I'm not really proud of anything I did today.
Oh, no. Like, wait, really?
You showed up. Even if you just showed up to practice today, you should be proud that you're here. And that
100%.
And so to like create that mindset every single practice has been one of my, definitely something that I'm going to continue. And I've started to bring back into some of my classes, because I think it's just so important. Even as an adult, I struggle to own my accomplishments. And I think, that, and then that's where that like 1% comes in. Like every day you did one thing that was just a little bit better. That self-compassion that, not every day is going to be 100%. Some days are going to be 70%, and showing up is half the battle. So,
well, that's what I kind of want to say here is that everything that you just described in terms of, the goal sheet and that mindset, you can adapt that almost directly to any other jumper or any other person using a jump rope. That's you're building up a habit, you're building up, progress and monitoring yourself and just building a system to have pride in what you're doing. I love that so much. I think everyone should kind of at least pull like 75% of that, because that was awesome. I really like that goal sheet. Seriously. Next is Devin Meek, episode 12, where Devin provides a succinct but very powerful method to grow your creativity and repertoire of skills. What is your thought process when you're learning new skills? Because I'm looking at the stuff that you do, and my assumption is it would have something to do with just being around a bunch of jumpers and really like bouncing ideas off of each other. But the stuff that you come up with in your group, it's just very different,
So that is a part of it, is just being around jump ropers a lot, and then talking about jump rope a lot, and thinking about jump rope a lot. All those things just happen. Well, the one advice that I can give, and I was actually thinking about making a video on this, and it's how to become a more creative jump roper. It's something that I've been practicing now for a few years, and it's totally been working, I think. And it's every single time I go outside and practice, even if it's just like 10 minutes, I'm just jumping around, or if I'm just like hanging out, I have to do a new skill. And that doesn't mean I have to like get a hard skill, and it definitely doesn't mean I have to get a cool skill. I just have to get a new one. Maybe it's, one I already had on the other side. Maybe it's some rope release where I'm not even jumping, I just catch it. Any idea, right? Because as you build on that quantity of ideas, you're going to find some with the quality. Mm-hmm. A lot of people give up on ideas really quickly when they find out they're really not that nice, or they're really not that good of an idea. But if you keep working with it, it's going to work its way into a different skill where it is applicable and it is cool. And I just think the more you focus on building new tricks, the easier it's going to be to think of new tricks. I think creativity, like any other skill, is one that can be practiced.
Up next is a section with my chat with Shari Hawkins on episode 15. Shari discusses her view of progress, not perfection, and how to cultivate a sustainable mindset around your own accomplishments.
So I actually think this is like a perfect time for me to explain the mental journey that I've kind of been through in the last, probably the last 10 years before I was in college, like all that. But I have had like severe anxiety, like problems, like I would say severe, because I shared this a little bit on my profile, but I literally tried to injure myself one competition because I did not want to be there. I wanted to go home.
Like, you were hoping as you were doing your events, you would just you would go too fast, go too hard, not warm up.
Oh no, I was in the corner trying to tear my own Achilles in the corner. Just not like, maybe I'll fall in a hurdle. No, I was like literally trying to do something bad. Like, it was crazy. Like, so that's why I would say severe anxiety, like crazy. And that was one of the things this last year that I really wanted to focus on. I told myself, you will only get better if you figure out how to defeat the monster in your brain. And I realized through just asking everybody. I asked every single person. I just put down my pride and I was like, hey, have you ever had anxiety when it came to track? Some people would literally disappoint me and say, no, never. What is that? And I'd be like, oh gosh. Well, okay, next. And then, but you know what? A lot of people were like, yes. And you know what helped me is this. And they would give me all of these ideas. And the more that I talked about it with people, the more I realized my own story and what was causing my anxiety. And for me, I realized that what was causing my anxiety was making my results equivalent to my worth. So if I won a competition or I got a personal best, that means I am a good person. And I mean like I'm a good daughter. I'm a good friend. I'm a good partner in life. Like I'm worthy because I did well in track and field. And I don't think that I cognitively realized that that was my issue. But once it clicked for me, I was so disgusted with myself. I was like, how dare you? Like, you're a good person. Like, you care about others. Like, what's wrong with you? And I realized, like, you are putting so much pressure on yourself to be perfect that it is eating you alive and making you bad. Like, honestly, that anxiety ruined a lot of competitions for me. I remember in college, I was ranked third, which, I'm not going to lie, I had no reason to be ranked third. What in the world? I was doing so well. Like, and you know what? Guess what was two of my really good events were next. I was a great long jumper. I was probably one of the best long jumpers of the field. And then, actually, I'm not going to lie, my 800 was terrible back then. But I would have been able to hold it just fine. But I was so nervous that I didn't eat one thing that entire day. I did not eat a single
That's not good.
piece of food. And in a pentathlon, when there's 5 events in one day, that equates to like 7 hours of work and no food, which equates to on the ground and not functioning. Yeah. And that's exactly what happened. I took dead last in long jump, which what in the world?
Because that's your event.
That was one of my best events. And then I'm pretty sure like I was close to getting lapped in the 800. Like, it was so bad. Like, it was just, which I know that would have killed in a track and field podcast, by the way, for all of you listening, because Nate didn't laugh. And I just realized that
it's on Nate. You didn't laugh.
I just realized that you probably think that that's an actual possibility to get lapped. That's impossible. It's impossible to get lapped in an 800 unless
we have the context now.
Unless you're literally like on your hands doing handstands and walking, and then you might get lapped in an 800. Like, there's no way you're going to get lapped in it. Even if you're like walking quick, you're probably not. So that's why it was a joke, but I realize now that I forgot who my audience was. That would have killed it at track. Actually,
Come on, Nate, get together.
I don't think it would have killed because my delivery was probably wrong too. So I got to work on that. But yeah,
so that competition.
But anyways, it was terrible, right? Because my anxiety just got the best of me, and I realized, like, Shari, like, why are you putting so much like emphasis on like your results. Like, that's so silly. And so I promised myself, I had a really big competition, probably at that time, the biggest competition of my life. And it was in Austria, and I was competing with like all of my like people that I just like admired when it came to like, they're all already 2-time Olympians. They're all amazing.
But you were competing with them.
With them, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a big competition.
Jeez.
And I don't know how I got invited. I was so excited, but I was like, okay, good for all of you for thinking I deserve to be here, but whatever. and I was like, okay, I promised myself 2 things. I said, you will smile during this entire competition. After every event, no matter what happens, you will smile and you will have fun. And those are your only 2 rules. It doesn't matter if you get a 0 in one of the events.
You will have fun.
You will have fun, which I had never done in a heptathlon before. I've always had fun after, like looking back, I'm like, oh, that was fun. But like during, I'm like, no, get me out of here. So I told myself those 2 things. But a little background on that. Remember I said that I pulled both my hamstrings earlier. This was my first competition coming off of 2 pulled hamstrings. So they were healed.
Oh, wow.
But that's why I was like, you'll just have fun. Like there's no pressure.
That's why it was easy to have that
in my
mindset.
mind, there was no pressure because
you weren't expecting so much of yourself.
Yeah, I only went because I couldn't miss the opportunity. You know what I mean? That's why I was there. I didn't want to miss the opportunity to go compete at that high level. So my first, I hadn't even run hurdles in 10 weeks. So we got ready for hurdles. Hurdles went great. I got a season best and I was like, oh yes. And I gave myself a little high five and it was awesome. And then high jump, which I would say is my best event. Like I would say it was high jump and then hurdles and then long jump. That's what I would say. High jump came up and I did terrible. I probably haven't jumped that bad since high school. And, but as soon as I knocked down the 3rd bar on that attempt, because we get 3 attempts in high jump to clear the bar. And so not only did I mess up once, I messed up 3 times in a row. So good for me. But anyways, as soon as I knocked that 3rd bar down, I heard my own self promise, you will smile after every event, you will have fun. So I shrugged my shoulders because everybody knew that I did terrible. Like, no, it's not like everybody was like, oh,
Right.
she tried. Like
Right.
everybody was like, yikes. Like,
That's
why?
like if you missed on every skill in your freestyle routine or something like that.
Yeah. And everybody was just kind of like, all right, go back to double dutch, you know? Is that a good joke for jump rope?
No, because double dutch
Dang
is
it.
still pretty cool, but it's all right.
Oh yeah. You have to
That's
remember
like go back to the playground.
that's in my opinion, to be fair though, I wasn't thinking like good double dutch. I was thinking like playground double.
Playground double dutch. Okay.
Okay.
Then yeah. that
Okay.
makes
So
sense.
if I would have said that would have been better. Okay. I'm still learning. Soon I'll be your favorite comedian on this show. Anyways, so yeah,
So that's
so
what you
everybody
mean-
everybody knew I did bad, but I shrugged my shoulders, I like smiled, and then all of a sudden it was crazy. Like people who I feel like would never give me the time of day because they're Olympians and everything, they all started coming up to me. And they all just were like,
Your
hey,
attitude.
and they were like, you know what? Hey, like, it's all right. Like, that happens to me all the time. But they were saying it in their adorable accents because they're from all over the world. And I was just like, okay. Well, anyway, so I got off, good attitude. And I went over to my parents. My parents were like, what's wrong with you? But they were nice because they were
Because you had a good attitude and they weren't expecting you to be okay with it.
no, because I jumped so terrible.
Oh.
And they were like, what's wrong with you? And then, but, you know, my attitude was so good. And they were like, you know, like, okay, here we go. And then what did I do? I did terrible in shot put as well. And I was like,
gosh.
I will smile. I will get through this.
Yep.
Everything's okay.
Reminding
And
yourself.
then I ended up, I just told myself that, but because there was literally no pressure on me, I really did it. I really committed. And I ended up on day 2 having the best second day I've ever had in my whole life.
Oh,
It was
wow.
crazy.
Wow.
And then I went home being like, every single minute of that heptathlon was fun. Like I genuinely had fun in that heptathlon. And it just changed everything for me. Like, Shari, when you really don't put your worth on how you do, but instead how you respond to how you do, like wow, like think about how much more fun everything is.
So it's not so much that score and getting the best score. It's how you are acting around all of that, how you interact throughout the day.
It was all about me and like who I was as a person. That became the focus again, instead of how I did as an athlete, that made me a good person. And so I think that when I went into USA's, I had that same mindset and I did great in all my events, but somehow I still kept that mentality. It was something that clicked for me. And so, I mean, I guess like this is just my own unsolicited advice that probably none of you want, but if you are having any like mental blocks or anxieties or anything, like what I would honestly ask is, why are you having them? What is your root cause? And sometimes the answer can be, I don't know, and that's okay. And just ask people like, hey, do you have anxiety when this happens or that or this or that? And like the more you talk about it, the more you're going to find out your own journey. And then once you find out why you're feeling that way, you can control it, and it's like, and that's just my own personal journey. And I know that everybody's mental challenges are different. And I totally respect that and understand it for sure. But bringing now full circle, you talked about the on running video and like how, we're not chasing perfection, but we're making progress. And I think that having a pursuit of just getting better every day, if you really can say that you left a practice, a session, a workout, and you genuinely got better that day, I think that even if it wasn't the best day ever, but you showed up and you learned something, it was worth your time. It was worth your effort.
Next up is a portion of episode 8 where Michelle Fongson talks about training speed scores and keeping track of your progress without raising the bar too high too quickly.
So there was a point in time where I was experimenting with percentages, and so I would have them. We would do it like a test at the beginning of the year or the beginning of the season, and then that would be like their best number. And then each week we would test the 30 seconds or a minute or 3 minutes. So I would change it between each week as to which one we would test. And then I'd have them write down their numbers. And then based off of those numbers, I would have them do various speed workouts at hitting certain percentages of that score. So sometimes we would I would start them practicing with just 10 seconds of speed. And I want them to practice at 90% of their max score, their personal best, and to be consistent with that. Like that was my goal, was to teach them consistency and to teach them what it felt like. What was 90% and what did that feel like? What is 80%? What did that feel like? And then also the value of tracking scores and to use that to see where they were. Because a lot of the times, you come away from a practice and you can reflect and you can say, okay, that felt pretty good, or that just felt like crap. Mm-hmm. But then you have to have some way of looking at it objectively. So by having my kids write down the numbers, it put a number to their day. So, even though they may have felt like their practice wasn't great, like maybe they felt like, I only got 400 or in 3 minute speed, or I only got 80. Well, you actually got 80 and you actually did it 3 weeks in a row. So I think that's pretty good. Yeah. So now let's work on hitting 81 consistently or 82 consistently. So I had all these numbers graphed out for them in a spreadsheet, and I would kind of plug and chug up my numbers as we would go throughout the weeks. But I really tried to harp on the value of consistency and tracking your numbers.
Once you hit that new number, right, your new personal best, anytime you get anything less than that, it feels like it wasn't a success. But in reality, what you're saying what you're saying right now is exactly how it truly is you did raise the benchmark, and that's awesome, but understand that there are other benchmarks that exist and are applied differently day to day versus that one time you hit a personal best.
Yeah. 100%. Yes, I agree. And I think innately as jumpers or as athletes, competitive athletes, we're we're kind of wired to think about the next best thing and what could be better, instead of
Always,
being
yes.
present with, you're right. Instead of being present with, okay, this was a solid practice. I accomplished X, Y, and Z, and now I'm going to take that with me to the next practice. And that's hard.
It's
It's really hard
very hard.
mindset.
That's the biggest thing that honestly that I struggle with the most, especially because I tend to train, especially now, but in the past I used to train a lot solo by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of benchmarking and getting your mind straight is tough, even when you have a coach.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like the coach is there to also help you see objectively, like, hey, you didn't have that, double under 2-footed frog last week. I know you didn't hit it 3 times today, but you will eventually. You just have to keep doing it, and you're looking stronger. And look at your speed scores. And I think that's another job of the coach, is to help the athletes see their skills for what they are objectively, and encourage them that this is where our focus should be, not on something that is going to bring you down. We'll help you see it objectively and help you take the steps forward accordingly. We had been working towards winning a world championships for so many years, and that year that we decided in 2004 to move forward with the world championships, we really sat down and had a very serious conversation of, okay, if we're going to do this, we have to do this, and we've got to do it right. We've got to plan it right, and we're not going to leave anything up to chance. Like, this is going to be the year, and that's the mindset that we had in the entire year, and that's what made us connect consistently in between the times that we weren't together. Like, okay, what are your speed scores looking like? What have you been practicing? This is what I did at practice today, to make sure that we were on track. But it took a lot of work, a lot.
That's what I've noticed with a lot of the champions, not even champions just in jump rope, but in other sports as well, gymnastics, CrossFit. I've spent a good amount of time just chatting with them, and that the way the brain works, that thought process of a champion is exactly what you just described. It's so, it's very intense, but it's also very practical.
Yeah. And you have to be, because life is life. Like, I was in high school, my teammates were in college. Like, we all had other things to do. We have family, we have friends. But this was something we've been working towards for such a long time, that we made it that priority our year. Like, that was our year to win, and we did everything possible to ensure that happened. And that's the mindset we had to go into it. If we didn't, then we might as well just not have competed, because we wanted to win that year. Yeah.
And then did you take that? I'm curious how that translated into the soul jumpers when you were coaching them. Would you?
Yeah.
Did that play a role at all, or how so?
I think that mindset was something that was very special to us. I think that what I've seen, generations change. There's different, I think, personality traits and different work ethics and different kind of perspectives on life from generation to generation. And the way that I really worked with my kids was, we had the motto of practice like you compete. And that means you show up and you practice like you compete.
And that sounds so simple, but it's not.
Yeah, I know, right? It's so simple, but it's not. And I actually had that written on their handles of their jump ropes: practice like you compete.
Really?
And,
That's really cool.
And it's something that I think we lived up to for a long time. But at the same time, the more that I've coached and worked with people and kids in jump rope, is to really just let the kids be kids as well. Let them have fun. Let them, try out new things, and not be afraid to miss, to let them feel comfortable being vulnerable and putting themselves out there, and showing the class a couple tricks that they learned for the day, and, having everybody clap. And I think that was the most important thing that I brought to the table. And, of course, I instilled the value of hard work and discipline and mindset for these kids. But at the top of it was just being positive for one another and being happy and and learning something and being better a little bit every day.
The final clip to send you off into the new year is from the first episode with Sunny Smith. Sunny discusses the impact a jump rope can have on mental wealth and the significant ability to positively shift your mindset with such a simple tool.
And I say in October of 2016 is when my jump roping journey began. I joined this jump roping group on Facebook. It was a group that Cross Rope has put out. And at the time, I think the community may have been around 3,000 members, if that. And today, I think it's grown to about 100,000 members on their group, or 80,000, somewhere in that range. So one, I think that speaks to the fact that jump roping is really taking off right now, which makes me so happy to be a part of this community. Mm-hmm. But getting back to what I was saying, I ended up getting, I want to say like late November of 2016, early December, I ended up getting really sick. And I mean, really, really sick. In the course of the past 2 years, I've probably missed over 6 months of work at times, the stints being as long as 3 months at a time.
Oh, wow.
And I had 2 of those alone. So it was more than 6. I've missed more than 6 months of work in the past 2 years, just kind of dealing with a chronic illness that I have. But during that time, one of the things that happened to me that I still deal with on a daily basis, I think that was the first time in my life that I was ever faced with being unable to trust my body. And for a person who's been an athlete my entire life, like I could literally go out and play 5 basketball games in a day, and then get up the next day and do the same thing. So I think because of that, I've kind of taken for granted what my body has been able to do. And so finding myself in a position where I didn't know if my body would be able to get out of the bed or walk down a flight of steps or walk up a flight of steps was a very, very difficult time for me. And I've always dealt with anxiety throughout my life, but this kind of took my battle with anxiety and my struggle with depression to a level that I was not prepared for and that I did not know was even a real thing. And it got so bad at times that as I started to heal and I started to get better and we started to work out, various medications that would work for me. I would, have a couple good days and then find myself bedridden. I stopped wishing to get better. And I started wishing to be well enough for a day to just kind of exercise. So I speak to that. I started wishing for an opportunity to just kind of skip rope again, because I kind of just started getting into skipping rope before I got sick. Right. And so there was already this kind of, I was so intrigued. I hadn't been challenged once I stopped playing basketball, there was nothing that really challenged me in that way until I picked up a jump rope in October 2016. So then having that journey kind of halted and be halted so unexpectedly by a health crisis, that desire, that burning passion to keep learning and to keep growing was still there. And belonging to that Facebook jump rope community, it was so huge because the community was so small at that time and people realized I wasn't posting. It was my first kind of outlet outside of my family to feel like there's a group of people that care and are wondering why you're missing. And it was all kind of still centered and focused around jumping rope because it was a jump rope group. And so I found myself wanting to get, just hoping for moments where I'd be able to skip rope again. And as I started to get better, I started to notice that on the days that I was well enough to skip, once I was done, I found my mental state to be in a very different position or different place than when I was unable to work out. And so instead of wishing to get better, I started wishing that I just had an opportunity to jump rope. I started wishing for an opportunity to challenge myself in a way that I had missed, that kind of allowed me to accrue, if you will, these kind of little wins. It was like I would go into a session to jump rope, right? And go in with a skill that I at the beginning of the session I was unable to do. But I was able to put in you know, and at that time it wasn't a ton of time because, you know, like I said, my body was failing me, my mind was failing me. And so where I found my body failing me and my mind failing me was just like, okay, here's this world that I now found myself in where I feel so incapable. I feel so unable to do things. I feel so emotionally drained. I'm so worried about so many things in this space, right? But then there was this tiny space that I would go into, and I would get these tiny wins, and I would leave feeling like here's this place where I'm winning, right? Here's this place where I feel like I'm losing, and I'm losing perpetually, right? But then here's this tiny space that's just mine, that I have complete control over, that no one else can affect, or good or bad. This is just me. This is just this rope. And here in this space, only the two of us exist. And at the end of this, something is given back to me that I worked for, right? So it was like in these spaces, in these minutes of time that I was able to carve out, that I was well enough to skip rope, I was able to give so much back to myself. And I just began to build on that. And as I started to get better physically, I noticed that those moments were doing so much more for me mentally, because it was giving so much of myself, my self-worth, my view of self, my
you were earning
sense
every
of self.
step of it.
Every step of it, I had to go out and get. And nothing gave it to me except for me, that space and time, and that jump rope, right? Because at that time, that really was all that I was doing. I wasn't strong enough to kind of put weight to anything that I was doing. It was just here's what my lungs, you know, whatever time I was able to go downstairs in my basement and give, it was whatever my lungs, you know, had to give for that day. And sometimes those sessions were 15 minutes, but they felt like 50, right?
Yeah.
And all of those moments were earned. All of those moments were mine. All of those moments I had to work for. And so it was like this relationship that was built out of a need to feel like I could do, a need to feel like I could be. And as I started to kind of wonder, why is it after these sessions do I feel this emotional boost? Like, there has to be some science behind this. And I couldn't figure it out. And I didn't know who to talk to, kind of to have this conversation with without sounding crazy, right? Like, I was already battling anxiety and depression, which I think are things that I think the main killer in those things is not even the anxiety and the depression itself, but it's the fact that you feel like you have to suffer in silence. And so that isolation, I think, is what makes those types of, kind of mental conditions or illnesses, if you will, 10 times worse than they already are. And so I couldn't figure out really why I was feeling that way. And so dealing with the anxiety and the depression that I was already battling, not being able to go and talk about that outside of my family. And then now here's this, why am I feeling emotionally better after I jump rope, right? Like, why am I feeling like I can go and conquer the world after I've had a great exercise session? Like, there was no one for me to kind of bounce these ideas off of. So I immediately went to the internet. I started reading, and I started finding all of this literature about the connection between exercise and mood enhancing benefits, or the fact that exercise, regular, consistent exercise has scientifically been proven to be, as effective as certain antidepressants when treating mild to moderate, depression, and like all of these things. It's like, I think there are so many people who can benefit from my experience. Yes. And while I felt like I had to suffer in isolation, I can only imagine how many others feel the exact same way, right? And not only are they feeling the exact same way, but they may not even know that tapping into something as simple as exercising, or more specifically, skipping rope, something that is affordable, something that is portable, something that isn't weather restrictive, because if it's raining outside, most places you can find a pocket in your house to skip a little rope, right? To get 15 minutes in. And so here's this tool that I can share, that I can give back to people who I know with everything in me are going through on some level the same thing that I went through. Damn the six pack, damn the
the vanity metrics.
The vanity. Thank you for that. Damn the vanity metrics. But going into a space where all you have to call upon is yourself and your dedication, and to know that every time I go in to give, I leave getting, right? And I had complete control. Like, it does something for your psyche. It does something for your ability and your will to want to continue. And then to know that there's a scientific component that these things are fact. Like, I'm not just saying this. This isn't just a feeling that I feel. Like, there are countless studies that speak to what exercise is able to do for people who suffer and struggle with mental health conditions. And when I say mental health conditions, this could be anxiety. This could be, and anxiety has many forms. There's social anxiety. There's general anxiety disorder. There's health anxiety, which is most commonly known as hypochondria. And I hate to use that term because that term has such a negative connotation, where you hear hypochondriac and you think a person who makes something up. And that's actually not what it is, right? And so that was one of the main things I went through, was health anxiety. And so the medical world has really tried to change that terminology from hypochondriac to health anxiety, because, you know, when you've gone through a traumatic situation where you feel like you can't trust your body anymore, and now every sensation you get, you're not sure, and you find yourself not being able to trust yourself. You're not sure if your body is telling you, oh, we're about to go back into this dark space, right? So immediately everything starts to shut down. Now I found myself in a full-blown panic attack because I've got a headache today, right? But I remember that dark time I was in for 6 months, where my head hurt for 6 months straight, and a headache today could just be a headache today. But to a person who's been there, does this headache today mean that I'm about to go? It means something completely different, right? And so now you find yourself in this downward spiral, being completely unable to save yourself. And then from there, it just continues to spiral and continues to spiral.
So the jump rope, then, were you able to use that as a tool to
intercept?
Yeah, intercept. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. And you know, even like just through my research, there's an awesome book called Spark. That
you know, what's really funny about that? One, I was going to ask you about that. Two, I'm staring at my copy right now. That's why I was going to bring it up.
And it is like the Bible to me for everything that I went through, right? Like, trying to find reasons why, like scientific reason behind why I was having these immediate good feelings about myself, or just about carrying on, right? Like, what are these psychological benefits that I know that I'm experiencing from skipping rope or from work, whatever your desired style of working out. I am a little biased to the jump roping, and for a reason. It isn't just because I love to jump rope. I do think jumping rope has a different, it has added benefits to just exercise, because it calls upon your cognitive ability and rhythm and strategizing and all those things that not all exercise is going to afford you. So while exercising is good, finding, when you're dealing with mental health challenges, finding an exercise that's going to challenge you both physically, but also mentally through and through, you'd be hard pressed to find an exercise apparatus that is going to challenge you through and through, full body and mentally, as efficiently as the jump rope. And so that's why I'm such an advocate for it. But talking about Spark does an excellent job laying out scientific evidence.
Science-based.
It's all science-based, and it talks about all different forms of mental health conditions. So, I mean, from the spectrum of autism to ADHD to anxiety to depression to obsessive compulsive disorder, which is a subset of anxiety disorder. So that's often, kind of one of the blanket, or anxiety you'll hear is one of the blanket terms for OCD. But for a person with OCD, OCD is just OCD, right? So then there's that as well. But in all of these things through and through, he talks about how exercise, it can be used as an effective form to helping treat so many of these conditions. And it's such an untapped regimen, if you will, or I don't want to say a drug. It's an untapped advantage.
I mean, there's something to be said that it's a drug in terms of like, and also he referenced he being the author, John Rady.
Rady,
mispronouncing that. But there's something to be said of it as a drug, because I mean, you have hormones and neurotransmitters that are floating around in your head, and there's a lot of different ways to look at that in terms of, like you're talking about. The conditions, different conditions give you different sets of hormones and stuff. But as John Rady explains in the book, when you're actually working out, you're basically rewiring that the same way you would be with medication, a supplemental drug or substance. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. You use, again, here you go, hitting the nail on the head again. But there's ever a high to chase, it's the high that I get every time I am finished working out.
Seriously, because what's so unique about that high is that it's a domino effect into literally everything.
Into everything.
You know, you can take ibuprofen and your muscles will feel a little bit better, but if you go work out, you're gonna be like, I should also eat a salad. I should also wake up earlier. I should also all of that stuff.
Absolutely, like it just boom, 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 and then like I was saying to my point earlier, you find yourself not hitting these vanity metrics. You find yourself not hitting these plateaus when you just change the narrative a little bit. Sometimes, and this could be applied to anything in life. When you find yourself going through something that you can't seem to find your way through. Sometimes it's as simple as, instead of like, hey, I need to go to the drawing board. This sucks. I'm scrapping the whole damn thing, right? Which is what happens when you hit a plateau. Like, yep. I can't lose these last 5 pounds. Forget it. I'm just going to have 8 cheeseburgers, right? Because now I'm sad and now I'm, right?
Yep.
If you just change the narrative a bit, just change the narrative a little bit, sometimes that makes all the difference in the world. And that is my mission, to change the narrative just a little, so that my beautiful people, right, my mental health warriors, that they know that they've got a little bit more of a fight in this game than they may know that they currently do.